Buddha kind of gives us an instruction manual for life. And what this instruction manual is the Eightfold Path. And we've been going over the Eightfold Path on these Friday nights for a few weeks now. And so what the Eightfold Path is this way we learn how to live life in a certain way. The way we learn to view life in a certain way. And the way we learn to bring in our spiritual practice into life in a certain way. And so this Eightfold Path is what the Buddha used himself as a way to end his own personal suffering. The Buddha was not a deity. He didn't receive his information from a divine source. He was just a guy that was struggling and gave it his all and found a way out. And luckily, along the way, people wrote it down so we can do it too. And so we can find that same awakening that the Buddha found if we follow this Eightfold Path. You know, there's even a story that after the Buddha reached his awakening, he was like blissed out, having a great time, you know. And so he went for a walk, and somebody saw him, and we were like, "Whoa, bro, you got something going on." And he's like, "You're like glowing, man." And then he asked him, like, "Are you a god?" And the Buddha's like, "No, I'm not a god." "Are you an angel?" "No, no." "Are you a ghost?" "No, no, no." And then the guy's like, "Well, what are you?" And he says, "I'm awake." And so this is the same exact awakening we should be going for in this lifetime. So the Eightfold Path, this is the how-to manual on not only end our suffering, but find this piece of awakening. And I promised y'all I would go over this every class, so here we go. Let's get into it. What is the Eightfold Path? The Eightfold Path is divided into 3 sections. And the first section we look at is the wisdom section, panya, we call it. And then the second section is what we went over last time, is sila, is the ethical practices, right? And today we're stepping into the third section of the Eightfold Path, samadhi, the meditation practices. And so these 8 factors, we have right view and right intention. Those are the first 2 factors, right view and right intention. Those first 2 factors fall under the wisdom practices, the wisdom we gain when we follow this path. And then we step into the second section of right speech, right action, right livelihood. That's the ethical practices. Right speech, we watch the way we speak. Right action, the way we behave in the world. Right livelihood, what we do for a living. That's the ethical portion. And now we're stepping into the third section, meditation, with right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And so this is kind of like our sweet spot here. We are a meditation center, right? And so we're stepping into what the Buddha actually taught for us to do in meditation. So tonight we find ourselves on this 6th factor, right effort. And so right effort, the original word is samavayana. And so samavayama, it is a Pali Sanskrit word. So in this tradition, we come from the earliest forms of Buddhism. And the earliest forms of Buddhism were recorded in this very dead language called Pali, P-A-L-I. And that is a commoner's dialect of Sanskrit. And so these practices and teachings of the Buddha were recorded in this old school dead language. And over time, they've been translated. And if you come here enough, you know we like to pick at the words a little bit to try to figure out what exactly these things mean, because they've been translated sometimes by people that never even practiced. A lot of times it's like these like British scholars that go to Sri Lanka that have never practiced Buddhism in their life, but they were concerned about the language and translating. So we're given this word, samavayama. The word I want to outline particularly is this word sama. Sama we often translate to right. So samaditi is right view. Samavayama, right effort. Sama. But there isn't an exactly quite appropriate translation into English for sama. So right doesn't necessarily mean all right, all wrong. We tend to go into these extremes in our modern culture of pass and fail. Like if I got it right, I can celebrate and be nice to myself. If I got it wrong, I can punish myself. It's not like that. Sama sometimes can be translated to appropriate. So this is the appropriate effort we put into our practice. Sometimes a friend of mine calls it harmonious. So it's like the harmonious effort with the way things actually are. What I want to go into is one is very common. We call it balanced effort. So I kind of like that idea of balanced effort. We're going for this way of putting in effort into our spiritual practice with a sense of balance. So there's an old story. Ananda was this guy. He was the Buddha's younger cousin, and he was also the Buddha's assistant. And so as the Buddha was going around giving his teachings, Ananda had this like really good memory. And he would memorize everything the Buddha would say. And he was really smart. And so as time went on, as the Buddha's giving all of these different teachings, Ananda's remembering all of it. And then as the Buddha gets older, he had like back problems. And so the Buddha wouldn't be able to teach as much as he did when he was younger. So Ananda, who memorized everything, could give all the Dharma talks for people. And as time went on, the Buddha fell sick, he died. And so while they were putting together the Buddha's teachings, groups of arhats came together, and they were like, okay, we need to find something to agree upon here to figure out the Buddha's message because it's helped us. Let's put it together so we can keep this going. And the word arhat means fully awakened. So as you go through this path, arhat is, I reached the same awakening the Buddha did. Totally possible, right? But Ananda wanted to be invited to this group of people that were collecting the Buddhist teachings because he knew this shit. Like, he had it down. But he wasn't an arhat. He wasn't fully awakening yet, so they didn't invite him to the council. So time was coming, and he really wanted to get awakened so he can get into that council. And so he started meditating his ass off, right? Hours, staying up all night meditating, and he wasn't getting anywhere. And he's like, oh, well, maybe walking meditation. So he's walking until he had boils on his feet and, sores, and it was nasty. And he's like, oh, God. And he's just sitting more and walking and sitting and walking, trying to get this meditation going so he becomes an arhat, so he can give his intellect, his know-how to this council. And then it reached a point where it was like, oh no, the council's tomorrow. I gotta get this down. And so as he was meditating, he remembered a teaching the Buddha gave. The Buddha gave this teaching to a musician. I think it was like a lute player or something, like some sort of stringed instrument. And when he was teaching about effort to this stringed instrument player, lute player, he was talking about tuning, proper tuning for the instrument. Because if you tune too tight, it's going to sound like crap, too sharp. But if you tune it too loose, it's going to sound like crap, too flat. And so this message came into Ananda's mind. He's like, oh yeah, maybe I'm too sharp here. Maybe I should go lay down. And so as Ananda took faith in the Buddhist teachings here to lighten up a bit and go lay down, he went to go lay down, and as he was putting his head down on the pillow, ta-da! He reached full awakening, and he's an arhat now. And not only is he an arhat, he develops siddhis. Siddhis are magical powers. And so the next day, as the council was meeting, Ananda comes in, and he wasn't sure if people were going to believe him, that he's like, yeah, I reached awakening last night. So he had to show off a little bit. And he used his magical powers to fly in and fly over the whole council and show them, I am awake. Right? Wonderful story. Right? But this is the idea of effort. Right? We'll teach flying another day. Effort is what we want to focus on today. It's balanced effort, right? That we come from a culture of more, of greed. Work more. You can always do more, right? Hustle culture, right? So we may have social influence to be a little bit hyperactive in our work. So checking in with yourself, like, okay, what is my proper effort? With me, sometimes I love the couch. I love those potato chips. I love the TV. Maybe too much, right? And so I may be dismissive to work. I don't want to go to work. And I don't want to go live life. I don't want to do this. So we want to find what we call the middle way. What's in between in our effort? Not falling into hatred, hating to do things, and not following into craving more. Can we find this middle effort? And in my own life, it's like I have to keep this contemplation going because I do fall into those extremes. So I want to go into what exactly is right effort. So while we have this effort of like doing the practice, the Buddha was very specific on what we do in this factor of right effort. And what we want to do is look at the mind, the effort of the mind. And what we're trying to do is develop what we call wholesome thoughts and diminish what we call unwholesome thoughts. Because what this practice is here is developing the mind. That suffering, if we're eliminating suffering in this practice, we discover suffering is mind-made. Sure, there's pain, heartache in the world, but we filter it into suffering through our thoughts. And in the Dhammapada, it starts off with the Buddha saying that if one acts with an impure mind, suffering follows them like the wheel of a cart follows the ox that pulls it. But if one acts with a pure mind, happiness follows them like a never-departing shadow. And so it's important to look at our own agency with our mind and how we can develop a way to bring the mind into what we call wholesome mind states. So what are wholesome mind states? So there's a discourse called The Two Kinds of Thought that the Buddha gave. And he's telling us a story about before he reached his awakening, how he worked with this wholesome, unwholesome thought process. And what he did was, he said, I started categorizing my mind into two kinds of thoughts, wholesome versus unwholesome. And what he discovered is, when craving, ill will, and cruelty arose, he put that in not helpful. Those thoughts, not so helpful. But then when thoughts of renunciation, kindness, and compassion, helpful. Let's put those in the wholesome category, right? And sometimes this turns into almost like a judgmental practice. And how we work with that is we define a difference between judgment and discernment. Judgment is like this personal I am thing. If you have a hateful thought, well, I am doing this practice wrong, right? That's judgment. But discernment is noticing, there's hate in the mind. And I want to have the wisdom to know if I keep on following that thought, I'm going to be suffering. So this idea that not to shame when a hateful thought arises. Just know that's a hateful thought and go, yeah, not a good idea to follow that one. What else can I have? Loving kindness. That one works. Let's go with that. So it's very practical here, not judgmental. So as we enter into this path factor of right effort, there's another list, because there's always another list, right? There's the 4 right efforts. And I want to read you these 4 right efforts. This is what we want to do in this meditation practice of right effort. It says, we start with the first one, the effort to protect the mind from unwholesome thoughts from arising. And I'll go one by one through these. The second effort is the effort to remove unwholesome thoughts that have already arisen. The third one is the effort to cultivate wholesome thoughts that have not yet arisen. And the fourth one is the effort to strengthen wholesome thoughts that have already arisen. So let's go into it. The first effort we look at, the effort to protect the mind from unwholesome thoughts. Protecting the mind from those thoughts of ill will, thoughts of resentment, thoughts of craving, thoughts of greed. Protecting them from arising if they're not here. So there's different things we can look at, right? At one end, how you behave. That's what we covered last time. So if you are aggressive, violent, rageful when you drink? Well, protect your mind from those thoughts by not drinking. I'm telling myself here, right? If you end up with lethargy, depression, shut down by watching pornography, try not to watch pornography, right? There's different aspects that we look at how we behave in the world, and our environments affect our internal world. And so things like watching the news a lot, that's definitely one I'm definitely guilty of. And I can hate Ron DeSantis, right? And it's like, oh, maybe I need to not care about what Ron DeSantis is doing right this minute, right? And so finding ways to look at how our environment affects our mind. And in the Buddhist teachings, like the monks, that when they go for alms rounds, you may see them in pictures, or I think there are some around here somewhere, that when they beg for food, they keep their head down because they want to protect their mind from all the stimulus that's going on around. And when they're in the world, it's keeping the head down to cultivate wholesome mind states and protecting the mind from unwholesome mind states. And so, yeah, being mindful of the environments you're in, and sometimes in in the recovery world, we say if you sit in a barber chair long enough, you're bound to get a haircut. So staying out of the barber chairs that bring up unwholesome mind states, protect your mind from thoughts of unwholesomeness, of hatred and greed. I got so much to say about that. Let's move forward, though. The second one, the effort to remove unwholesome thoughts that have arisen. So let's say, okay, you tried to protect the mind, you put the guards on guard, and then whoop, an unwholesome thought snuck in. What do we do? And so here's what we can do, a few things, right? The Buddha gave us a lot of options, and I think in our modern world we have a lot of great options. One of which I love is, okay, hate arose in my mind. I think I like investigation. Right? When we have mindfulness to know hate has arisen in my mind, I see you, hatred. Just as the Buddha saw like Mara, I see you, Mara. We see the hatred in the mind mindfully. And then I can bring in a sense of investigation, being curious with hate in the mind. And so bringing curiosity to know that's a thought. Oh, that's a thought. Knowing a thought is a thought. And then when we know the thought, even bringing in the sense like in internal family systems, I don't know if any of you have been a part of internal family systems therapy. I'm sure some of you actually are therapists that do this type of work. But in internal family systems, we look at how we have all these characters in the mind. Our mind is multiple, right? We may have been raised in this culture to think there's mono-mind, one mind. But in internal family systems, they talk about how everybody has multiple personalities in this mind. And one personality that can arise, hatred, unwholesome thought. And so when we look at it, we start to understand it. And in internal family systems, we talk about protector parts. That there's no bad parts. Maybe some confusion, but no bad parts. And oftentimes, when my mind goes through extreme hatred, it's trying to protect an underlying wound. And so when we see that hatred in the mind, it's like, oh, I see you. What else is here? And oftentimes the head tries to protect the heart. And so when I can see hatred, I can go, okay, drop down into the heart. Oh, yeah, there's some grief there. There's some anger there. There's some sadness there. And when I bring that sense of investigation into the heart, the head starts to soften a little bit. So that's one option I love doing. Another one is meeting it with loving kindness. That the Buddha said hatred is not appeased by hatred, but hatred is appeased by love. And so as hatred arises, can we bring loving kindness towards it? Because thoughts are habitual. And so if we have this habit of hatred arising and we try to hate that hatred out, we're still just ingraining that habit of more hatred. But when hatred arises and we meet it with loving kindness, we're now ingraining a new habit of loving kindness. And a story I love, a Mikey classic, King Saka. Y'all ever hear of King Saka? Well, he's a king of a Deva realm, but I'm not going to go into all of that. But he's a very powerful king, let's say. And he lived in the time of the Buddha. And King Saka had a huge-ass palace. big palace, huge ceilings, gold everywhere. And in King Saka's beloved, beautiful palace was his cherished throne. He loved this throne, beautiful gold throne and shiny. But King Saka needed to go away on business. So before he left for business, he set up 2 guards to guard his palace and his beloved throne. And so as King Saka left, something happened. A little tiny demon snuck in past the guards, didn't see him, and sat on King Saka's throne. This damn demon sitting on the king's throne. So the guards saw this. Oh, we got to get rid of this demon. And so they start to try to banish the demon, get rid of the demon. But they didn't know that this demon had a special diet, a diet of aggression and anger. And so every time they tried to be aggressive and angry at this demon, it grew. And they're just like, get the hell out of here, demon. And it grew even more. And it started to grow fangs, and it started smelling bad. And then they started insulting this demon. They said, oh, you're nasty, you're smelly, you're gross. And it grew so big that eventually it took up the whole palace. And then King Saka came back. And he comes back to his palace and sees this giant anger-eating demon taking up his whole palace. But King Saka knew better. He says, what's up, anger-eating demon? How you doing? And the demon's like, well, I'm kind of fucked right now. I ate too much anger. I'm like stuck in your palace. And King Saka's like, oh, poor guy. While you're here, you might as well hang out. And he shrunk. And he's like, well, how about let's watch TV? How about let's order a pizza? And it shrunk even more. It's like, how about a back rub? And it shrunk more. Tell me, how you doing? Like, how's the anger-eating wife and kids? And it shrunk even more until King Saka was able to, put him aside. And so this is how our mind works. As the demons in our mind arise, if we bring kindness towards them, they'll shrink and be more manageable, because it's this habitual pattern that we create. And so that's how I generally like to look at how to abandon unwholesome mind states, is by loving them. There's this saying that there's only really 2 things in our experience. There's what's loved, and there's what's longing to be loved. And so the hate, the demons, the craving, the addiction in the mind, it's just longing for love. So bring that love towards those so-called demonic figures. All right. And so let's move forward. The third effort. The effort to cultivate wholesome thoughts that have not yet arisen. And I even talked about this last time. If you're just hanging out, nothing going on, it's okay to do loving kindness. And I'll get to loving kindness meditation formally in a bit, but we use phrases over and over again. May I be at ease, may I be at peace, may I be kind and gentle with myself, may I be filled with loving kindness. And we say these silently towards ourselves to ingrain that neural habit, that thoughts are habits. Continue to know this and understand that karma is real. Karma is this habitual tendency of all things. So whatever you do, you get good at. And so don't wait to go to this mental gym until you feel weak. When you feel good enough, go to the mental gym of training and sharpening your skills of kindness and doing everything in any moment to lift up the mind. Just thinking ease, thinking peace, thinking of a person in your life that represents friendship to you. Thinking of a good friend. I had a wonderful conversation with a friend today. I've been so happy all day just because I had a great conversation with a friend. Call a friend if it brings up your attitude. So knowing what brings up your attitude and do it, because that will be a skill to develop. And I'm not only just talking about pleasure too. The skill of developing compassion. When things fall apart and when it rains it pours type thing, can you even develop that heart of compassion? And so when we have compassion and love and kindness, when things aren't hitting the fan, when shit starts hitting the fan, you'll be prepared. So train yourself in any moment. Don't wait to be kind and compassionate till shit starts falling apart. Start now, and you'll be ready when it comes. So the fourth one we want to look at, the effort to strengthen wholesome thoughts that have already arisen. So you're like, I'm in the zone. I'm like totally compassionate when pain arises, totally appreciative when pleasure arises. I'm just basking in this loving kindness. Keep it going. How can we keep this going, maintaining this? And for me, there's a lot of fun things I do. My teacher, Venerable Panyawati, taught me singing meditation. She loves singing. And I am a singer, but I would normally reserve it for rehearsals or on stage. And there was a thought that occurred to me when I was a kid. I went to this dentist, and he would sing all the time. And it was so delightful. Like being at the dentist, this sucks. And I hear him coming in and he's singing like 50s and 60s, like oldies type stuff. And it was just like, that guy, yeah, he's sharing that loving kindness. That's so good. And I was like, I remember as a kid how much I admired that style. And I was like, I kind of like that. You know, it's not in my personality, and I'm not one to go, just sing. But even having that attitude in my mind, not that we all have to be singers, but having that attitude of like, this is working, let's keep this going, let's keep this going. And so the way I do this is I sing in my head. I sing in my head very often. If you see me not doing anything, most often I got a song in my head, and most often it's a Disney princess song. I'm a Disney adult. I love Disney. I love Cinderella. I love A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. I sing that song so much to myself. And this is a way to maintain this loving kindness in any moment. I was just talking about how I go for morning walks. And so I sit in the morning, and then I go for a walk in my neighborhood. And so I'm already kind of in the zone of loving kindness because I do most often loving kindness meditation in the morning. And then I go for a walk and I see every house. And I see the house, I think, may you be at ease towards the house. And there may be people in there, there may be not. But I just know somebody's going to be in that house. I'm going to wish that house well. And if I see people, I'm going to wish you well. And then the next house, may you be at peace. The next house, may you be kind and gentle with yourself. May you be filled with loving kindness, just so I can lift it up and strengthen this muscle of loving kindness by doing something so simple as wishing houses loving kindness on my morning walks. So yeah, and also when we gladden our mind in this way, we start acting in a certain way. And so this will come later, but acting in generous ways, especially when we ask for donations. We have the practice of dana, D-A-N-A, which loosely translates to generosity. And so when you have this generous heart, you start acting in a certain way. You're generous with your time, you're generous with your space, even generous with your stuff and your money and all of that. And it's a beautiful way to live the Dharma. And so this meditation practice takes us somewhere. And so what I would like to do is transition it into a formal loving kindness practice. And so as we understand that thoughts are habits, this practice of loving kindness is the intentional practice of developing wholesome thoughts as habit. And what I like to do, I like to start with ourselves, and we will use these phrases that I offered earlier. May I be at ease, may I be at peace, may I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be filled with loving kindness. And we'll just continually say that to ourselves over and over and over again to ingrain that neural habit. And then we notice one thing I want to outline. We have two minds. You have one mind where you can think thoughts on purpose. So if I ask you to think of Cinderella Castle, you could probably think of it. Even if you haven't been there, you can picture a castle. Picture me happy, going, yay, I love this castle, right? You can picture that on purpose, right? But then there's this other mind, unintentional mind, thinks thoughts all on its own. Thoughts just pop into your head, you didn't do it. And normally, if you're anything like me, they're kind of gross and rude. You know, they're like, fuck that guy. And I was like, where'd that come from, right? So what we want to do is when unintentional thoughts arise, you didn't think it on purpose, it just popped into the head, bring loving kindness towards that thought. Even if it's a rude one, even if it's shameful, even if it's judgmental, bring loving kindness towards that thought. And if you think a thought on purpose, make sure it's one of ease, peace, gentleness, and kindness. Because what happens is, over time, when you start ingraining this habit, those unintentional thoughts will just automatically be kind. It's the wildest thing when it starts to happen. So, be kind and gentle with all of it. Okay? Let's just do a little practice. So finding a way to sit, that just supports meditation. And loving kindness meditation, there isn't so much emphasis on having this very upright spiritual posture like mindfulness. So just sit back, relax, enjoy yourself. So finding a comfortable enough way to sit. And making any adjustments that need to be made before just resting in a still body. And if it feels right, allowing the eyes to close. Let's just settle in, acclimating to the space. Maybe starting with a few deep in and out breaths. Just downshifting a little bit. In moments of stress, the breath can get very rapid and short. So by influencing deep in and out breaths, it communicates safety. And just guiding the awareness inward towards the body. In moments of stress, we lose track of this body, become disembodied. So by simply guiding your awareness into the body, it's an act of loving kindness, showing safety, safe to be in this body. And softening any points of tension held, softening the face. Allowing the shoulders to rest. Softening the belly. Surrendering the body to your seat. And so let's guide the awareness even further inward towards the heart. Maybe even breathing in and out from your own heart. If it feels right, putting your hands on your heart, welcoming a sense of touch, caressing your heart, holding your heart, bringing in a sense of self-intimacy. And allowing your heart to be held, surrendering your heart to your hands. So let's begin with this loving kindness by inclining the mind towards ease, by silently saying to yourself, may I be at ease. May I be at ease. May I be at ease. Silently and continually inclining the mind towards may I be at ease. Even as uneasiness arises, stress, restlessness, pain, may I be at ease with whatever arises, pleasure or pain. May I be at ease with this. May I be at ease. Breathing in and out, softening the body as we introduce the next phrase. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. Peace isn't the absence of conflict necessarily. Peace is a way to be with any conflict. So whatever arises, making peace of it. May I be at peace with whatever arises. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. May I be at peace. Breathing in and out, trying on the next phrase. May I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be kind and gentle with myself. Being kind and gentle with all the parts of myself, the parts I like, the parts I dislike, the parts I'm proud of, the parts I'm ashamed of. May I be kind and gentle with all the parts of myself. May I be kind and gentle with myself. Breathing in and out, softening the body with the phrase, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. Just saying that towards yourself, training the mind towards loving kindness over and over again. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be filled with loving kindness. And so these are the phrases to practice with. May I be at ease. May I be at peace. May I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be at ease. May I be at peace. May I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be at ease. May I be at peace. May I be kind and gentle with myself. May I be filled with loving kindness over and over again. So now I would like to expand the practice very intentionally by asking you to bring to mind a part of your experience that feels unwelcomed. And that may be a thought process of addiction, a thought process of depression, some self-hatred, shame, judgment. What part of you is hard to love? And as we welcome in these so-called demons, can we bring loving kindness towards the very parts of us that may feel bad, wrong, or unwholesome, and wish them loving kindness? May you be at ease. May you be at peace. May you be kind and gentle with yourself. May you be filled with loving kindness towards the part of you that feels unwholesome. Wishing it well. May you be at ease. May you be at peace. May you be kind and gentle with yourself. May you be filled with loving kindness, wishing the part of you that's hard to love, loving kindness. As worry arises, stress, anxiety, judgment, may you be at ease. May you be at peace. May you be kind and gentle with yourself. May you be filled with loving kindness. And all the parts of ourselves are worthy of love.
What's up, y'all? Reverend Mikey Noechel here from Wild Heart Meditation Center in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for checking us out. Do me a favor, please like and subscribe. And if you feel moved to leave a donation, you can do so at wildheartmeditationcenter.org or the Venmo link in the description. Peace and love.